Good evening, everyone. My name is Kirti, and I'm from Group 9, and our topic is about biometrics and its privacy concerns. It's the most beautiful topic, and we researched and focused more on the privacy concerns faced in the user's perspective. So, getting into the topic, here's the outline. We talk about objective, stating our research statement, and our findings and conclusion. We also give few insights about our biometric research and list out few security challenges that are being currently faced. Coming to the objective, any error in the biometric system that can lead to immense privacy leakage of any kind of sensitive information. As things are quickly moving towards password-free environment, there is a surge in technology. People are more comfortable using these systems. Then there comes the biometric systems for identification rather than doing it manually, because it's more dependable, accurate, and more precise. Third point states that end users like us individuals are completely unaware where our biometric data is being used. So the promise of a biometric technology is clear here. There are a lot of beneficial applications typically being focused more on security and for safety purpose. But however, the scary thing about the biometric information is when it's out there, it's completely you. So you can't easily change your biometric information because it's uniquely bound to yourself, and we can't. There is no question of changing, and it's close to impossible. What is permanent impact? Permanent impact is, for example, your biometric information is stolen, and you use a class action lawsuit, and they give you back 5,000. The company gives you back $5,000 to have a facial altering surgery or iris modification or the basic fingerprint modification. In many cases, these companies never know the big databases with such information are being stolen, and it is a loss for their company. And however, we are not going to focus there, and we focus more on the challenge. Maybe things like Kaspersky reading are the future, where we use some of the software which gives us the artificial biometrics. So whenever we can replace it once it's compromised. Anyway, these are still under development or being developed. So leveraging biometrics across the different platforms. Older technologies we have at the moment used for identification is not going to go away overnight. So they just can't give you the result overnight. So for a longer period of time, we need to have some combination of biometrics and old legacy calling in and linking it to your social security number or the unique ID that you possess. So how do we have to integrate in such a way? We have to integrate these different technologies in such a way such that they make them complement each other and gives you the accurate output, which is usable for the user. Coming to the spoofing method, this is a method of attacking fingerprint systems by basically creating artificial prosthetics or objects to censor. With a plaster of Paris, it might be any prosthetics or created robotically and being presented before the sensor. This is basically spoofing. The dangerous feature about these is they have the ability to imitate biological and behavioral aspects. Also, they lead to the attacks like replication and presentation attacks, and replacing features and sometimes overriding the matcher. Coming to the last slide, as we all know, these biometric features carry a unique set of information from every person. When such unique sources are compromised due to cuts or being damaged or burns and bruises, then there is permanent loss of information and can never be regained. From here, my friend will continue, and you guys have a nice day.
Security policies and security measures. End users are concerned about the sensitive information which can be obtained from the biometric information collected by the organizations. And the example of this sensitive information are medical information which can be obtained from that particular information stored. Consider an example where an organization is using an iris scan. Using this iris scan information, we can obtain information which are related to medical health of an end user. From this information, we can obtain medical information such as blood pressure, or whether that particular end user is pregnant or not. The next is a no security policies implemented within the organization. The security policies were not existing within the organization to protect this sensitive information. Security measures are not followed. End users are concerned whether how this information has been protected. To protect this information, the security measures are being not followed within the organization. The existence of security policies does not ensure that the security measures are followed. The organization must conduct an audit which ensures that the policies existing within the organization are followed by the team, which ensures the safety of the information.
The biometric authentication is convenient, but privacy advocates fear that biometric security erodes personal privacy. The concern is that the personal data could be collected easily and stored without the consent. Now that we understand about how biometric data is collected and stored, it's also important to understand how secure is the data being stored. There are several storage-based strategies for biometric data, such as biometric data can be stored on an end user's device. This is most common on smartphones that use Touch ID fingerprint sensors. When storing the data on the authentication device itself, the organization implementing the biometric verification process doesn't have control over it. Cybercriminals generally prefer to break into people's devices through mind games by luring victims into clicking on links or downloading attachments which eventually disclose their login credentials. A biometric database server is one of the more cost-effective methods of biometric data storage, although it is more susceptible to cyber threat due to network-based approach. As the data is held on an external server, it is susceptible to data breaches, which can be prevented by using encryption. But the issue with encryption is deciding where encryption keys will be stored and who will be trusted with access. Also, data can be stored on a portable device such as a smart card. This is not a centralized storing method where it is vulnerable to network-related issues. On a smart card, users have a certain amount of control of their biometric data, but if the card is stolen, biometric data can be easily extracted from the chip of the smart card. The concept of biometric data as a unique personal identifier that cannot be forged is fundamentally wrong and can foster a false sense of security. Of course, the flood of data presents enormous opportunities for abuse. Firstly, the accuracy of biometric data recognition by authentication systems, although relatively high, can still be insufficient for many applications. After all, such recognition is not simply calculating whether two hash sums are equal or not, as in the case of password-based authentication. Biometric systems usually have a greater than zero probability of false negative and false positive results. Also, research demonstrates that many human biometric characteristics can be forged by malicious actors, and copying digitized biometric data may be even easier than copying physical biometrics. Thirdly, and most importantly, biometric data, once compromised, is compromised for good. Users cannot change their stolen fingerprints the way they do stolen passwords. What's more, the biometric data may turn out to be compromised for all applications at the same time. An individual will therefore potentially be affected for the rest of his or her life. Given all these issues above, it is remarkable how careless biometric authentication system developers and users are about protecting these systems and the biometric data collected by them against these data attacks. It turns out that the biometric data may be stored in a format that is easily accessible to attackers. A striking example is the story of a major breach found in BioStar 2, a web-based biometric security smart lock platform. According to the researchers, the service had a publicly accessible database, over 27.8 million records, a total of 23 gigabytes of data on employees within 5,700 organizations from 83 countries. The database contained, among other confidential data, about 1 million fingerprint records as well as facial recognition information. According to the report, instead of saving a hash of the fingerprint that can't be reverse engineered, they were saving people's actual fingerprints that can be copied for malicious purposes. Another such example is the breach of 2015 cyber attack, which included nearly 6 million fingerprints of people associated with the US government's Office of Personnel Management or OPM. This compromised the biometric data and also affected social security numbers, health and financial informations, and names and addresses of the people.
Thank you, Gursimran. Now I will continue with the rest of biometric privacy issues. The next issue for discussion is biometric data sharing consent. What does biometric consent mean? Biometric consent is giving permission in written or digitally accepted form to use a given user's data. In this case, biometric data according to terms described by the provider. If the user agrees, then the terms are accepted, else can be rejected if the option is available. In India, biometric data is considered as a sensitive data, and some of the rules apply to different stages of collection, retention, closure, and transfer are collection. To collect biometric data from a person or entity must first seek written agreement from the data subject. This permission would imply the ability to decline the request for biometric data. Biometric data can be gathered for a valid reason that is related to or necessary to the entity's functions due to its sensitive nature. Second would be data retention. Once the goal has been achieved, the entity is no longer able to keep the biometric data it has obtained. Disclosure. To be able to disclose any biometric data with a third party, the entity must obtain the data subject's permission. This permission may be obtained under the contract between entity and data subject. Disclosure may also be made for compliance with law or is being made to government agencies mandate to obtain information, which may be for identity verification or for prevention, investigation, prosecution, and punishment of offenses. But this disclosure does not include the companies the data will be disclosed to or what they will be using our data for. Even though a direct entity is mentioning why and where user data is used, a third party is not mentioning the same. Next, transfer of biometric data. Biometric data can be transferred to any other person in India or outside, only with the concerned data subject's consent to the transfer, or if transfer is necessary for performance of a lawful contract between the entity and the data subject. An important condition attached to such transfer, which is not in the case of disclosure, is that the recipient needs to ensure the same level of data protection as the transferring entity. Moving on from India to Netherlands, GDPR prohibits the processing of biometric data for the purpose of uniquely identifying natural persons. Because of the sensitive nature of operation involving the processing individuals' biometric data, the DDPA, that is Dutch Data Protection Authority, actively punishes unlawful activities. In 2020, DDPA imposed one of its highest fines on organization that unlawfully used biometric data of its employee for attendance and time registration. Here GDPR conveys that employer-employee relationship explicit consent cannot be used as an exemption due to the imbalance between the controller and the data subject. It is deemed that the consent cannot be freely given in such a case and setting it as an example. Next, we will be discussing some of the compliances put in place by different set of regulatory bodies. In order to understand that, first let me define a regulatory body. A regulatory body is a public organization or government agency that is set up to exercise regulatory function. This involves imposing requirement, condition or restriction, setting the standard of activities and enforcing these areas or obtaining compliance. These bodies are required to keep in check the usage of biometric data. One such regulatory body is DDPA, as we discussed in last slide. Here, the DDPA states that basically Only in two exceptional circumstances would the use of biometric data for the purpose of uniquely identifying individuals to be allowed. The first one is if a data subject has given their explicit consent, and data subject have to be provided with real choice in order for this to show consent. If it is necessary and proportionate for security or authorization purposes to serve a compelling public interest is the second one. Some of the other bodies of regulation are European Association for Biometrics, Biometric Consortium, Biometrics Institute, International Biometric Industry Association, also known as IBIA, and the International Biometric Society, also known as IBS. The last concern for discussion is the usage of outdated biometric devices. As we know, biometric technology has evolved leaps and bounds in the past decades. Along with this, open vulnerability has also increased. In order to keep up with the pace, regular patching of devices becomes very crucial. If left unchecked, can leave traces for hackers to breach the security and collect personal data. To conclude, we would like to add that any evolving technology has a trade-off between enhancement and security. Until the technology vulnerabilities does not make security concern around data loss or is harmful to an individual, a trade can be made to make it better. Similar countermeasures can be found for many such vulnerabilities, such as a regulatory body. Even though there are concerns around the privacy issues of biometrics, the advantage outweighs them, and biometrics are now used more than ever. Thank you.